Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a vast, unforgiving desert. The sun blazes down without mercy, and the horizon stretches endlessly in every direction, offering no sign of shade or salvation. You've walked for days, your body aching, your lips cracked from thirst, and every step feels heavier than the last. You've seen others cross this desert before. Some barely make it, while others seem to glide effortlessly, as if the heat and exhaustion don't touch them. And then, it hits you. A bitter realization. No one told you how difficult this journey would be. You weren't given a map, no clear instructions, no guarantees. You've been thrown into this harsh wilderness without preparation, left to fend for yourself, while others seem to possess some secret advantage. Now, ask yourself, is this fair? The obvious answer is no. Life is unfair. Everyone knows it, yet most people silently resent this truth. We're told from an early age that hard work will pay off, that kindness will be rewarded, and that justice will prevail. But deep down, you've seen the cracks in that narrative, haven't you? You've watched as selfish, deceitful people climb to the top, while honest, hard-working individuals struggle to get by. You've seen beauty, wealth, and talent handed out unevenly, like some cosmic lottery where you didn't draw the winning ticket. And the more you think about it, the more unbearable it feels. Why do some people breeze through life while others suffer endlessly? Why do some inherit every possible advantage, loving families, sharp minds, and endless opportunities, while others are born into chaos, abuse, and poverty? It's enough to make anyone angry, cynical, or hopeless. And many people fall into that trap. They lash out at the world, blame society, blame fate, blame themselves. They become consumed by bitterness, haunted by the question that gnaws at them like a slow-burning flame. Why is life so unfair? But here's the paradox, the part no one tells you, the unfairness of life, the randomness, the chaos. It isn't just an obstacle, it's a hidden doorway, a key, a test. And those who learn how to face it, who stop expecting fairness and start embracing the chaos, discover something extraordinary on the other side. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If life were fair, you'd never grow. You'd never be challenged. You'd never develop the resilience, strength, and wisdom that only come from confronting the brutal, unpredictable nature of reality. Fairness sounds comforting in theory, but in practice, it would leave you soft, complacent, and stagnant. You wouldn't need to push yourself. You wouldn't need to confront your demons. You wouldn't need to wake up every day and choose to fight, despite the odds. Think about it. The greatest stories ever told, whether in history, mythology, or literature, are not about people who had it easy. They're about those who faced overwhelming adversity, who were knocked down again and again, but refused to give up. These are the heroes who emerged not because life was fair, but because it wasn't. Now, consider this. What if the very thing you've been cursing, the randomness, the injustice, the unfairness, is the fuel you need to transcend your limitations? What if the fact that life is unfair is the best thing that ever happened to you? That's the great paradox we're about to explore. But before we can understand why unfairness is the ultimate gift, we need to dive deeper into the hidden psychological and philosophical forces that keep most people trapped in bitterness and resentment. Forces that blind you to the hidden opportunities buried beneath the chaos. Forces that whisper in your ear, telling you to give up, to play the victim, to let the unfairness of life break you. If you want to break free, you have to understand how these forces work and why they have so much power over your mind. Let's go deeper. At the root of our frustration with life's unfairness lies an ancient desire, a craving for balance, for order, for justice. From the moment we're old enough to grasp the concept of right and wrong, we're told that fairness is a fundamental principle of life. If you're kind, you'll be treated kindly. If you work hard, you'll succeed. If you follow the rules, you'll be rewarded. This belief is comforting because it gives us a sense of control. It makes the world feel predictable. It tells us that we can influence our fate by behaving in the right way. But life doesn't work that way. And the sooner you realize this, the better. Psychologists call this belief in fairness the just world fallacy. It's a cognitive bias that leads people to assume that the world operates on a moral balance sheet, that good deeds will be rewarded and bad deeds will be punished. It's the comforting lie that fuels many of our expectations about life. But when reality doesn't conform to this mental blueprint, it creates deep psychological dissonance. Think about how this plays out in everyday life. You put your heart and soul into your job, only to be passed over for a promotion by someone who cut corners and played office politics. You treat someone with love and respect, only to have them betray you. You try to stay optimistic and work hard, but life keeps throwing one obstacle after another in your path. What happens next? For most people, this dissonance triggers resentment, bitterness, or despair. They start to believe that life has singled them out for suffering. They feel cheated, as though the universe broke some unwritten contract. And in many cases, they respond by giving up. They stop trying, stop caring, and sink into a victim mindset. But here's the thing. The idea that life should be fair was never true to begin with. It's a comforting illusion, a product of wishful thinking. And if you cling to it, you'll only set yourself up for more disappointment. This is where philosophy comes in, particularly the insights of thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche, Carl Jung, and Arthur Schopenhauer, who understood the harsh, chaotic nature of existence and the psychological traps that keep people stuck in suffering. Friedrich Nietzsche teaches us to embrace chaos. He had no patience for illusions. He believed that modern society was obsessed with comfort, fairness, and moral absolutes, and that this obsession was weakening the human spirit. In his view, life was not meant to be fair or easy. Life was a brutal, chaotic, and unpredictable struggle, and true greatness could only be achieved by those who embraced this reality instead of fighting it. This is where Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, or overman, comes in. The Übermensch is someone who rises above the chaos of life, who stops expecting fairness and instead creates their own meaning, their own values, and their own destiny. This person doesn't waste time complaining about how unfair life is. They use life's unfairness as fuel to grow stronger, more resilient, and more self-reliant. Nietzsche's philosophy is harsh, but it's also liberating. It frees you from the illusion that life owes you anything. It forces you to confront the uncomfortable truth. If you want to thrive in an unfair world, you have to stop playing by the rules and start creating your own. Another great man is Carl Jung. He taught about the power of the shadow. Carl Jung approached the problem of unfairness from a psychological perspective. He believed that much of our suffering comes from repressed emotions and unresolved inner conflicts, what he called the shadow. The shadow represents the darker, hidden side of our personality, the anger, envy, fear, and resentment that we try to bury because we don't want to face it. But when life feels unfair, the shadow often rises to the surface. You might feel intense jealousy towards someone who seems to have an easier life than you. You might lash out in anger when things don't go your way. You might fall into despair and tell yourself that you'll never succeed. So, why bother trying? Jung believed that true psychological growth could only happen when you confront your shadow head-on. Instead of denying your feelings of anger, envy, or frustration, you have to acknowledge them, understand where they come from, and integrate them into your conscious mind. This process, known as shadow work, allows you to transform your negative emotions into sources of strength, insight, and power. In other words, when you stop expecting life to be fair, and when you confront the uncomfortable emotions that arise from this realization, you unlock a deeper, more authentic version of yourself, one that is no longer trapped by illusions or false expectations. Schopenhauer talks about the art of accepting suffering. Arthur Schopenhauer, often called the philosopher of pessimism, had a bleak view of life. He believed that suffering was an inevitable part of the human experience and that much of our misery came from constantly craving things we couldn't have. But instead of trying to escape suffering, Schopenhauer argued that we should learn to accept it and even find meaning in it. This idea is echoed in modern psychology, particularly in the work of Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the Holocaust and went on to write one of the most influential books on human resilience, Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl observed that those who survived the concentration camps weren't necessarily the strongest or the smartest. They were the ones who found meaning in their suffering. They stopped expecting life to be fair and instead focused on what they could control: their attitude, their perspective, and their ability to endure. This is the hidden problem: living in a culture obsessed with fairness. In today's world, we're constantly bombarded with messages that reinforce the illusion of fairness. Social media shows us curated highlights of other people's lives, making it seem like everyone else is happier, more successful, and more fulfilled than we are. The self-help industry sells us the idea that if we just follow the right steps, we can have the perfect job, the perfect relationship, and the perfect body. And when reality doesn't live up to these expectations, we feel like failures. But the problem isn't that life is unfair. The problem is that we were taught to expect fairness in the first place. We were taught to believe that life should be easy, predictable, and just. And when it's not, we feel lost, angry, or defeated. This is the hidden psychological trap that keeps so many people stuck. They waste their energy complaining about how unfair life is, instead of focusing on what they can actually control. They stay trapped in resentment, waiting for the world to change, instead of changing themselves. But what if there's another way? What if, instead of fighting the unfairness of life, you could use it to your advantage? What if the very thing you've been cursing, life's randomness, chaos, and unpredictability, could become your greatest source of strength? To answer that question, we need to explore the unseen consequences of embracing life's unfairness, and how doing so can transform your entire perspective. When you stop fighting the unfairness of life and begin to embrace it, something remarkable happens, something most people never experience. You start to see the hidden consequences of life's chaos, and how this very unpredictability, which once felt like a curse, is actually a source of unexpected opportunity. But before we dive into those opportunities, let's examine what happens to people who refuse to accept life's unfairness. Look around and you'll notice it everywhere: the simmering resentment, the quiet despair, the constant comparisons that poison people's happiness. You've probably met people who seem perpetually angry at the world, convinced that life has cheated them. They complain about how others have it easier, how the system is rigged, how they never got the chances they deserved. And in many ways, they're right. Life is unfair. But here's the paradox. By clinging to their bitterness, by focusing on what they can't control, they only make things worse for themselves. This is the victim trap. How does resentment become self-destruction? Psychologists have a term for this mindset: learned helplessness. It's what happens when people feel powerless in the face of life's challenges. After enough setbacks, they stop trying altogether. They tell themselves that nothing they do matters because the game is rigged against them. And once that belief takes hold, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Imagine a person who believes that life is unfair and that nothing they do will ever make a difference. How do you think they'll behave? They'll stop putting in effort at work because they assume they'll never be recognized. They'll stop pursuing relationships because they believe they'll just get hurt. They'll stop taking care of themselves because, in their mind, what's the point? And as they give up on life, life, in turn, gives up on them. This is the vicious cycle of victimhood. The more you dwell on life's unfairness, the more unfair it seems. And the more unfair it seems, the more helpless you feel. It's a psychological trap that keeps millions of people stuck, bitter, and unfulfilled. But it doesn't have to be that way, because there's another path, a path that leads not to despair, but to empowerment. And it begins with a radical shift in perspective. Unfairness is a gift. At first glance, unfairness seems like a purely negative force. It creates inequality, suffering, and chaos. But if you look deeper, you'll see that unfairness also creates something else: possibility. Think about it. If life were perfectly fair, everything would be predictable. Everyone would follow the same path, achieve the same outcomes, and live the same kinds of lives. There would be no surprises, no unexpected breakthroughs, no extraordinary success stories. In a perfectly fair world, there would be no room for greatness, because greatness is born from adversity, from struggle, from overcoming the very unfairness that most people spend their lives complaining about. Take a moment to consider the people you admire most, the inventors, artists, leaders, and visionaries who changed the world. Do you think they achieved greatness because life was fair to them? Or do you think they succeeded because they faced unfair odds and refused to let those odds define them? Consider Oprah Winfrey, who was born into poverty, endured abuse, and faced countless obstacles on her path to success. Or Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison before becoming a symbol of peace and reconciliation. Or Stephen Hawking, who continued to make groundbreaking contributions to science despite being diagnosed with a debilitating disease. None of these people had an easy life. None of them were handed success on a silver platter, but they didn't let life's unfairness break them. Instead, they used it as fuel, as motivation to rise above their circumstances and create something extraordinary. And that's the hidden gift of unfairness. It forces you to adapt, to innovate, to grow. It pushes you out of your comfort zone and challenges you to become stronger, wiser, and more resilient than you ever thought possible. Once you let go of the illusion that life should be fair, everything changes. You stop wasting energy on things you can't control and start focusing on what you can. You stop comparing yourself to others and start measuring your progress against your own potential. You stop resenting life's chaos and start using it to your advantage. And as you do, you'll begin to notice something extraordinary. The very unfairness that once felt like a curse will start to feel like a blessing. You'll see how life's randomness creates endless possibilities for those who are bold enough to seize them. You'll discover strengths you never knew you had. And you'll realize that, in an unfair world, the only real limit is the one you impose on yourself. But how do you break free from the victim mindset and start living with this kind of courage and resilience? How do you stop expecting fairness and start thriving in the face of chaos? To answer that, we need to explore the next step, the rebellion. The radical, counterintuitive mindset shift that will help you break free from the illusion of fairness and reclaim your power. It's time to stop waiting for life to be fair. Time to rebel against the narrative that you're a victim of your circumstances. Because here's the truth, no one is coming to save you. And that's not bad news, it's liberating. The moment you stop expecting life to hand you anything is the moment you become dangerous. You stop playing by society's unspoken rules and start making your own. You stop seeking permission and start taking action. This is the rebellion, a quiet internal revolution where you reclaim control over your mind, your choices, and your future. But how do you start this rebellion? Number 1, ditch the fairness fantasy. The first step is to let go of the illusion that life should be fair. This is where most people get stuck. They wait for external validation, for justice, for someone to finally recognize their worth. Don't be that person. Life owes you nothing, and that's the best news you'll ever hear. Because when you stop expecting fairness, you stop being disappointed. You free yourself to focus on what really matters, your own growth, your own goals, your own path. Number 2, use unfairness as fuel. Every time life treats you unfairly, you have a choice. You can either sink into self-pity or rise above it. Use every setback, every rejection, every disappointment as fuel for your fire. Let the unfairness harden your resolve. Let it sharpen your focus. Let it drive you to prove, not to the world, but to yourself, that you are stronger than your circumstances. Consider the most successful people in history. How many of them had an easy life? Almost none. They succeeded not despite life's unfairness, but because of it. They used their struggles as stepping stones to greatness. You can do the same. Number 3, embrace the chaos. In an unfair world, those who thrive are the ones who embrace chaos. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They adapt, innovate, and take risks, even when the odds are stacked against them. This is the essence of anti-fragility, turning unpredictability into opportunity. When others complain about how unfair life is, you'll be out there making moves, taking chances, and capitalizing on the chaos. And when they finally realize that life isn't going to hand them anything, you'll be miles ahead, carving your own path. Number 4, redefine success. Finally, stop measuring success by society's shallow standards, money, status, likes, and followers. True success isn't about what you achieve compared to others. It's about how far you've come compared to where you started. It's about the strength you've built, the wisdom you've gained, and the freedom you've created for yourself. When you stop chasing external validation, you free yourself from the trap of comparison. You stop living for others and start living for yourself. This is the creed of the rebel. Life is unfair, and that's your greatest advantage. You don't need permission to succeed. You don't need fairness to thrive. You don't need anyone to save you, because you are your own savior. Once you adopt this mindset, you become unstoppable. Because while the rest of the world is busy complaining, you'll be out there building, growing, thriving. And that brings us to the final, ultimate truth. A truth that will change the way you see life forever. This is the truth that will either set you free or leave you haunted, depending on whether you're ready to hear it. Life is unfair, And that's exactly why you have the power to change your destiny. If life were fair, everything would be predetermined. Your talents, your opportunities, even your failures would be handed to you according to some cosmic system of justice. There would be no room for surprises, no space for greatness, no possibility of rising beyond the hand you were dealt. But because life is unfair, because chaos reigns supreme, you have something extraordinary: freedom. The freedom to break the rules, the freedom to defy expectations, the freedom to write your own story. This is the truth that will either set you free or leave you haunted, depending on whether you're ready to hear it. Life is unfair, and that's exactly why you have the power to change your destiny. If life were fair, everything would be predetermined. Your talents, your opportunities, even your failures would be handed to you according to some cosmic system of justice. There would be no room for surprises, no space for greatness, no possibility of rising beyond the hand you were dealt. But because life is unfair, because chaos reigns supreme, you have something extraordinary: freedom. The freedom to break the rules, the freedom to defy expectations, the freedom to write your own story. Think about it. The very thing that makes life feel so cruel, its unpredictability, is the same thing that makes extraordinary success possible. No one saw Oprah rising from poverty to build an empire. No one predicted that Nelson Mandela would go from prisoner to president. No one expected that a college dropout named Steve Jobs would revolutionize the world with a device that fits in your pocket. Their success wasn't inevitable. It wasn't handed to them. It wasn't fair, but it was possible. And they seized that possibility with both hands. You can do the same, but only if you're willing to stop waiting for fairness and start embracing the chaos. Here's the choice you face, right here, right now. You can keep waiting for life to be fair, clinging to the hope that someday, somehow, the world will finally give you what you think you deserve. But if you choose that path, you'll be waiting forever, because fairness is a lie, and the more you chase it, the more disappointed you'll become. Or you can choose a different path, the path of the rebel, the creator, the warrior. You can accept that life is unfair, and instead of fighting against it, you can use it to your advantage. You can let go of your need for control and embrace the chaos. You can stop comparing yourself to others and start measuring your progress against your own potential. You can stop blaming the world for your problems and start taking radical responsibility for your life. And here's the deepest, most liberating truth of all. The moment you stop expecting life to be fair, it actually starts to feel more fair. Why? Because when you let go of your resentment, you stop seeing the world as an enemy and start seeing it as a playground. You stop focusing on what you can't control and start making the most of what you can. You stop waiting for permission and start creating your own opportunities. Suddenly, you'll notice things shifting. You'll find yourself taking risks you never would have taken before. You'll discover strengths you didn't know you had. You'll start winning, not because life suddenly became fair, but because you finally stopped caring whether it was. And that's the ultimate irony. When you stop demanding fairness, life starts to feel a whole lot more rewarding. Not because it's any less chaotic, but because you finally learned how to thrive in the chaos. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. Are you ready to stop waiting for life to be fair? Are you ready to embrace the chaos, seize the opportunities hidden in the unfairness, and start living on your own terms? Because if you are, then welcome to your new reality. A reality where nothing is guaranteed, but everything is possible. And in the end, that's all you really need.